times he goes the distance. But in most schools, most colleges this year hadn't made that play on Sony Michel or Nick Chubb. So they've just been doing a tremendous job as a defense as a whole. But I think the back end, the confidence they have in that front to put enough pressure on the quarterback, they can take chances. And usually that's the makings of a great defense.
We've heard about how rematches it's hard to beat a team twice. But I was going to say, as somebody who's done it, and 5 out of 6 times in this game, the regular season team did win. Why isn't it hard to beat a team?
I don't necessarily. I think you game plan different, right? I think every game that you play changes. I think you can play an opponent Saturday and play them the following Saturday, and you may have a different plan. And so that's why I don't buy into it. There may be a psychological aspect to it. I would almost give the team that lost the psychological advantage, right? Nothing to lose. We've already been beat. We've been embarrassed. We have everything to play for in Georgia's situation, and we want to come prove that the first game was a fluke. So that may be why people say it's hard, but I'm a football guy. And when you break down the film and when you get ready and prepare for a game, you're preparing for a totally different team than you played 2-3 weeks ago. Because things change, dynamics change. You figure out what works against them. They know the same thing about you. When I played for Dallas in the NFC East, we knew we were going to have Washington and Philly and New York twice every year. And it never came in our mind that it was hard to beat a team twice. We just had to be prepared and let the chips fall where they may. So I don't necessarily buy into it, but it's I guess it's food to talk about.
When you take the narrative in terms of emotionally having, how they beat number 1 2 times in 3 weeks, is there validity to, it gets kind of, do you get worn out or drained or exhausted, or do you not really buy that?
I really don't. I don't buy it. Look, this happened to us in 2003 when I was at LSU. It was the same scenario. Georgia, we had to play them twice. We played them early in the regular season. Nobody picked us to beat them. They said it was a fluke. We played them again in the SEC championship and beat them. If you get exhausted playing this game, you're not going to have success. So I think Auburn right now is one of those teams where they hit their stride. They've become what they could be. Early on, Stidham was getting used to this offense. Chip Lindsey, Gus Malzahn, who's calling plays. I believe that in this program, it was a lot of things that had to get sorted out. But with that being said, you go to Clemson and only lose 14-6 against a really good football team, so you have something there. And then you go up 20 in the first half against LSU. Realistically, Auburn could be sitting here 11-1. That's what they should be sitting here at. So, I don't know if that narrative really plays well for this team. I met those guys. I talked to a bunch of them on their team. They feel like they're as good as anybody. They feel like they're the best team in the country. And if you're going to win a national championship, you better feel that way.
You mentioned Kirby has changed the program here since Rick was let go. Is he ahead of schedule with where the program is in just 2 years?
That's a great question. I don't necessarily know if he's ahead of schedule because it was a bunch of good players at that school already. I think mentality change possibly ahead of schedule. Georgia just existed, right? I mean, you knew they were a pretty good team, but you didn't expect much from them. I think mentally, getting Kirby over from Alabama, I think immediately made the players that were there buy in, right? They said, we got a guy that's been there a bunch, and we know he knows what he's doing. So the mental buy-in, I think, is the difference. The physicality that they play with, that's all Kirby. That's the demand. And look, there are a lot of great coaches in college football, a lot of them, believe it or not, even though the records don't indicate it. But I think the ones that can kind of evolve with how the game is transitioning, the ones that can either try to get ahead of that curve or be right in there while it's changing, I think they can have success. He's going to recruit great. He's a great personality, right? He comes from a rich stock. Players will buy into a lot of things before they even talk to Kirby Smart. They'll know a lot of things. Georgia's a great place to go to college. It's a great place to play football. I think he changed the mentality of the football team. It's a new message. When I talked about Mark Richt, it wasn't about Mark Richt not being a great coach. The message was stale. Players just wasn't enthused. There's a difference in the way Georgia plays now than when Mark Richt was there because they just enthused about it. Their coach demands that as well. So I think mentally is what he's changed more than anything. And because, look, Nick Chubb has been a great player. Sony Michel has been a great player. He got Lorenzo Carter out of his shell. He's playing a lot better. You look at Roquan Davis, Smith. A lot of people didn't know who Roquan was necessarily before the season started. But you get him with a coach that's defensive minded, and that coach tells you that the middle linebacker spot is probably the most important position on this defense. Not only do you get that guy to buy into the confidence of being asked to do such an important job, but then you find out he's an athlete and he can get to the rock. So Kirby's just done a tremendous job transitioning these guys' mindset. And when you hear them all talk, they talk about it. We focused on next week. We want to have a great Tuesday practice. We want to have a great Wednesday. We want to go into Saturday feeling confident about everything that we're doing. So what that tells me as a player, being in those positions before, my coach is giving me what I think is the best plan for us to win games. And when you can buy into that as a player and you got talent, you can do some great stuff.
When you take the beating that Georgia did up front, both on offense and defense, can you necessarily turn that around in the course of weeks, or is that just matchups and it's going to be what it is?
Well, that's why you pay offensive coordinators a lot of money, because you have to identify what we can do best against this type of defense, because it's different every week. And I think when you prepare for a game, right? When you playing J.J. Watt at full strength, you know your tackle gonna get his butt whooped. You got to figure out how to help him not get his butt whooped. And I think that's the responsibility of what they're gonna have to do. There are defensive linemen at Auburn that nobody in the country is gonna block for consistently throughout a whole game. So you come up with nuances, you get them off balance, you do things to create scenarios where they may be a little slower because they trying to figure plays out. And I think that's what you have to do. I don't think you negate Auburn's defensive line if you try to play them straight up. How many years have we talked about teams running into the heart of Bama defense? Like, why are they doing that? Instead of giving your team the best possible shot to win. So I think that's going to be the difference. I don't think Georgia's offensive line has gotten that much better that they feel like they're going to go toe-to-toe with Auburn's defensive line and be able to have success. But what you can do is evaluate the film and say, hey, guys, we have an advantage here. We have an advantage here. So that's what you have to create. That's what coaching is. Coaching is putting those players in the best possible situation to succeed. And if you're not doing that, you need to find another profession. So if they